welcome back to Queer Cosplayers Family Kitchen for the continuing adventures of Tamriel month, where we are exploring the Elder Scrolls Official Cookbook Volume 2, Tastes of Tamriel. So last week we made some delicious and savory toad muffins. This week we are making, I guess you could say it's either a side or a main dish, depending on your opinion, but we are making some delicious Kollopi meatballs. Now, this is a dish I haven't made before, so I am actually very excited to see how these turn out. So, without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, sweeties, so the first step is I cut up and chopped up some shallots and got a saucepan and a tablespoon of butter. So we are going to put these on and saute them for about 5 minutes. So you're going to want to check on them periodically, but again, keep them on for about no longer than 5 minutes. Alright, sweeties, so these are just softened. Perfect. Now we are going to add 2 minced cloves of garlic. There we go. Scrape the excess off there. And scoop the excess into my little peelings into my little pan here. There we go. Then one more. There we go. So now we are going to want to leave this on again for about another 2 minutes. Alright, sweeties, these are good. We can take them off of the oven now. Now we are going to put them on a paper-lined plate, like so. Going to allow some of the excess butter to drain off. Then we are going to set these aside before they go into our meatballs. Alright, sweeties, so we are going to get our meatballs assembled now. In the bowl, I've put the softened shallots and garlic, and I've also added 1 egg yolk. Now, for the meat, it calls for wild boar, but that can be pretty tricky to get your hands on. So I am just going with some nice ground pork. I've got a little over a pound here, so we are going to put that in. Get this paper off of it. There we go. Then let's see, we are also going to add 1/3 of a cup of breadcrumbs. Half a teaspoon of salt. There we go. Half a teaspoon of ground pepper. There we go. Seal that back up. Oh, let's see, a teaspoon of fennel. Oh, forgot to get, there we go, forgot to get the cover off. So once again, a teaspoon of fennel. Get this covered back up. And then last but not least, we are going to add a teaspoon of coriander. Oh, good. It is just big enough to get in. All right. All right. Seal everything back up. Now we are going to start mixing these together, so you can use a spoon, or if you like me, you can use your hands. Alright, sweetie, so as you can see, we've got 12 meatballs here, which is exactly the yield the recipe said we should have. Now, we are actually going to have two separate things going right here. We are going to have our meatballs, and in the pan that we made, or that we softened our shallots and garlic in, this is where we are going to create our gravy. But to start out with, we are going to put our meatballs in the pan here. We are going to want to brown them on both sides, then make sure they are cooked all the way through. Excuse me. Then we are going to make sure they are cooked all the way through for about 10 to 15 minutes. Action. Alright, sweetie, so we are going to get started on our gravy. I've got 3 tablespoons of butter melted in the pan here, and we are going to slowly sprinkle in the flour here, and then get a nice roux going, which is the base for any sauce. So we're going to want to keep this going until it's a nice kind of paste. Alright, sweetie, so using a whisk, we are going to slowly add the chicken broth, like so. Now you are going to want to constantly whisk this so it stays nice and thick. So I'm adding about 2 cups of chicken broth here. There we go. So again, we're going to want to constantly whisk this until it gets nice and thick. And also for our meatballs, I have flipped those over, so we should have about another 7 or 8 minutes. Action. Cut. Alright, sweetie, so we've got our gravy nice and covered. We're going to bring it to a nice boil, and then we are going to let it simmer for just a couple of minutes. We want to try to get it nice and thick. All right, sweeties, this is nice and thick, just about perfect. So now we are going to add half a cup of sour cream. There we go. Set that aside. Then we are also going to add a half a cup of heavy cream. There we go. All right. Gonna whisk that in. This is going to give us a very nice coloration for the gravy. Then, let's see, we are also going to add in 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. There we go. This will give it a very good seasoning. There is 1. There we go. And 2. And last but not least, if I can get it open, a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. There we go. Now, we are going to continue whisking these ingredients together until they are nice and combined. That is going to give us a wonderful flavor.
Cut.
Oh, sweeties, both the meatballs and the gravy turned out beautifully. So, as you can see, I have now put the meatballs in the gravy, and you're simply going to want to stir them in like so until the meatballs are sufficiently covered. Then, once they are covered, you are going to want to serve this as soon as possible. Oh, sweeties, this smells divine. The meatballs and the gravy turned out fantastic. I also baked and mashed a potato to go with it. So there is only one thing left to do. Sweeties, that is delicious. This is exactly the kind of thing you would find in a great tavern across Tamriel. So, thank you so much for tuning in. I am really enjoying getting to spend Tamriel month with you, and I really hope you tune in for next week's episode because we are going to be doing something very, very special. So, see you next week.